I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Top Senate Republicans held a press conference following their weekly caucus meeting on Tuesday. They addressed the aid package being developed to support Ukraine, as well as inflation and food insecurity. The GOP leaders then took questions on how they will proceed if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. Listen in to their comments.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we all agree the most important thing going on in the world right now is the war in Ukraine. I had a chance to call the president last week and request that the Ukraine package move by itself and quickly. He said, let me think it over. He called back in about 15 minutes and agreed that we need to do this Ukraine only and quickly. I think we're on the path to getting that done. Discussions are underway between the House and Senate appropriators on the crafting of the package. It needs to be clean of extraneous matters directly related to helping the Ukrainians win the war. We had an opportunity, I know the Democrats did as well, of hearing from the Ukrainian ambassador. One thing I thought was extremely interesting, I asked her about pro-Russian sentiment in the eastern part of the country, which has allegedly been there for a number of years, and how those people now feel about the Russians. Obviously, they're not in a very good position to take a poll right now, but her surmise is it'd be extremely difficult to find a single Ukrainian citizen who was any more sympathetic with the Russians.
We're just a couple of weeks away from the May 23rd deadline, or the time at which the administration has said that they are going to repeal Title 42 when it comes to our border. And as you look at what's happening at the border and the illegal immigration, the number of the flows that are coming across the border illegally, the crime, the drug overdoses in this country, which are at epidemic levels, it's pretty clear that reversing Title 42 is going to create major problems for our country. They're predicting already, as you know, about 18,000 per day coming across the border, and you compare that back to pre-pandemic, about 1,600 per day. That adds up to about 500,000 per month coming across the border illegally. And it's important, I believe, that the administration reconsider that position. Now, this is the National Police Week. We're starting to recognize our law enforcement officers, those who defend and protect us, and express our appreciation to them. I'm sure you'll hear a lot of speeches to that effect this week. But the one thing that we could actually do to put actions behind our words is to continue to give them the tools that they need to enforce our laws, starting with ensuring that Title 42 stays on the books, so that law enforcement personnel in this country are in a position to and capable of and have the tools in place to continue to do the job that they're doing in trying to stop the crime, the drugs, and all the illegal immigration that's coming across our border.
Well, this morning, Americans woke up to the highest gasoline prices in the history of the country. The highest gasoline prices in the history of America. The pain caused by the Biden administration inflation has become a breaking point for millions of Americans. The number is $5,200. That's how much Americans are going to have to pay extra this year just to keep up with the cost of the things that they bought last year: food, groceries, other goods. $5,200, $100 a week extra. President Biden's mismanagement of the economy and inflation has really trapped Americans in an inflation nightmare. So today, President Biden addressed the nation about inflation. But he has been incapable of dealing with the crippling inflation that Americans are living with. Remember, President Biden first said, oh, this is going to be transitory. He said it month after month after month, 7 months. Today, he also blamed Russia, Putin. Look, Americans were suffering from inflation long before Putin invaded Ukraine. Of course, he blamed COVID. He blamed a whole lot of things today. But we didn't have a Harry Truman moment where he said the buck stopped with him. Americans didn't really hear this president accepting any responsibility for the inflation and the pain of which they are living. Didn't point to the massive spending bill of last year that flamed inflation. Didn't talk at all about the attacks of American energy that he did when he first came into office. This price of gasoline today is $1.99 a gallon higher than it was the day he came into office, almost $2 a gallon more. $100 doesn't get you as far today as it did the day that he became president. Didn't talk about how bad his policies have been for the American economy. Pointed his finger at everybody else other than himself, and the American people are sick and tired of it. Republicans are ready. We're ready to grow the economy again. We're ready to get energy flowing again, and we're ready to get Americans working again.
Well, we did talk about the elements of the Ukraine aid package, the survival package, frankly, for Ukraine today. The number one element is speed. The Ukrainians need what they need as quickly as we can get them what they need. But we also talked with the ambassador about the direct aid to their government, and very satisfied with her explanation of how they dealt with that first $1 billion of aid. Got it through put it in and got it through the IMF, prepared to give all of the information anybody would like to see as how that aid is used. Obviously, they've not only got extraordinary expenses, but they don't have much money coming in. The tax collection system in a situation like this doesn't work well at all. And the other thing we talked about was food, something I mentioned here last week, but something Ambassador Beasley, who runs the World Food Organization, talked about, and our sense that that needs to be an important and a specific part of the non-military aid package, so we can prevent the kind of chaos that's going to occur if we don't begin to help Ukraine get its food out of the country, get its food planted for this year, and understand that there are going to be consequences no matter what happens from ports that don't work, and a country that provides so much of the food in the world not able to provide that food.
And I would like to build on what Senator Blunt just brought up, and that's that food insecurity around the globe is hard enough. It's even worse when it's exacerbated by a war. And we know that Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. It's a lot like we think of Iowa right here in the United States. Ukraine provides so much food to the Middle East and to Africa. Now, we did approve as Congress $100 million in food aid. And through a conversation that we had with USAID last week, we discovered that none of that aid has actually been dispersed. It has not gone anywhere. And part of the reason is the shipping costs. And what we are hearing is that those shipping costs actually are more than the food is worth. And there is current law that states 50% of the vessels that are used to ship food aid out of the United States has to be U.S. flagged vessels. Well, currently, there are only 4 of those types of cargo ships that are U.S. flagged and meet the specifications according to law. There are over 12,000 of these cargo vessels that are worldwide. So our own laws are really prohibiting us from doing the right thing by getting that food aid out of the United States and onto Europe and other countries that are in need. So we are working on that, but right now We can run the bill through Congress if we need to. However, the DOD and the president also have the authority to waive those requirements. So if we really want to disperse the aid quickly, Mr. President, we need you to step up. Secretary Austin, please step up. Let's waive those requirements and make sure that we are helping not only the folks in Ukraine with their starvation and those that are food insecure, but also those in the other countries that are in need.
In Joe Biden's economy, we have 8.5% inflation, which is a 40-year high. We've got the highest gas prices in the history of the country. We've got a labor participation rate that's low. We've got inflation that's going way faster than wage growth. We've got a GDP that's declining. And now we've got mortgage rates that are significantly up just this year. Joe Biden gave a talk this morning, blamed everybody else on inflation. He took no responsibility and has no plan. I think what all Floridians know is this president has no ability to deal with inflation. In the private sector, when you have a CEO that doesn't have the ability to deal with something, they resign. They go on and do something else. Joe Biden ought to do the exact same thing, and that's the only way we're ever going to get inflation under control in this country.
Leader McConnell.
Chad.
Good afternoon. Thank you. We've heard a lot of your suggestions here about what your interpretation is of the Democrats' bill on abortion here and what you think it would do. But what we have not heard and what has not been clear is what the Republicans intend to do on abortion. Do you intend to have a bill to ban abortion nationwide if this leak is in fact accurate? What is exactly what Republicans want on abortion?
First, let me make it perfectly clear, in spite of suggestions to the contrary, there are no issues which Senate Republicans believe should be exempt from the 60-vote threshold. In other words, there's zero sentiment in the Republican conference in the Senate to get rid of the filibuster. Some of you know I have many flaws, but being inconsistent is not one of them. I said repeatedly no to President Trump when he was there and wanted to get rid of that. Historically, there have been abortion votes on the floor of the Senate. None of them have achieved 60 votes. This particular measure the Democrats have today is particularly radical, and I'll call on others to comment on the radical nature of it. But I think it's safe to say there aren't 60 votes there at the federal level, no matter who happens to be in the majority, no matter who happens to be in the White House. So I think the widespread sentiment of my conference is that this issue will be dealt with at the state level. The Supreme Court, if this becomes the decision, has obviously said this is ripe for discussion in Democratic bodies. We happen to be a Democratic body. Schumer is proving that by having us vote on it tomorrow. But I think I'm pretty safe in saying most of my members believe this will be dealt with at the state level.
So, Leader, then can you rule out, will you rule out holding a vote if you're the majority leader on a bill to ban abortions nationwide?
We're going to, let me try it one more time. I think the sentiment in my conference is for this issue to be dealt with at the state level if we are in fact confronted with a final Supreme Court decision that throws this issue back into democratic processes.
Leader McConnell, when you spoke to the president the other day, did you talk about the COVID aid package that he wants, and what path do you see for that now that it's been separated?
Yeah, good question. I talked about it only in the sense that it needed to be dealt with separately, and it's something we're going to continue to discuss. And as you know, there's a broad bipartisan demand for continuing Title 42, and I think that's the context in which that vote ought to occur.
Leader
Mr.
McConnell.
Clarify then, just in that interview, I mean, what did you mean by saying a national abortion ban is possible? And there is some legislation potentially under consideration by some of your members to ban abortion in 6 weeks. Do you plan to move forward with that?
The word possible refers to the Supreme Court's decision, if in fact that becomes the decision, makes it possible. The best evidence of that is that the Democratic leader is going to have us vote on it tomorrow. The Senate, by the way, is democratically chosen by the people of the country, and that's the point. The court makes it, if that's the decision, the court makes it possible for there to be votes at all levels of government and democratic bodies on this issue.
Mr. Leader,